Hello everyone, it's James from Keeping Anime, and today we'll be talking episode 3 of this season 3 of Bungo Stray Dogs. Or, if you want to be really technical, it's technically episode 28, entitled Only a Diamond Can Polish a Diamond. Now, this episode basically kicks off from where we left off the other episode. So last week we found out that Chuya is Arakabaki, and we actually find out how she's brought into this world. So basically, you remember Rando, the guy that Dazai was interrogating last week? Well, he tells us that he was the one who pulled Arakabaki out of the void. So Arakabaki was said to be like this secret entity that was floating around endlessly in this void, and due to his subspace ability, or gift, Rando managed to take Arakabaki out. And in unleashing Arakabaki, he obviously caused that big blast that we've seen in the previous episodes. Now, the reason as to why he unleashed Arakabaki is because Rando was actually a spy from the West that was infiltrating this facility that was researching Arakabaki, and basically he found Arakabaki with his partner, and his partner betrayed him. And when they both clashed against each other, him and his partner, they were found out by the military of Japan. And in order to avoid capture, Rando basically unleashed Arakabaki, creating that disaster, and basically giving birth to Chuya, almost. Because it's told in this episode that Chuya has no memories of before 8 years ago, which is when this incident occurred. But Chuya is basically the vessel in which Arakabaki resides in. So after we get through most of that sort of information, we then have a really good fight scene where Rendo basically sets up his subspace, which basically cancels out Chuya's gravity, basically making it so that he can't be hit, but Chuya can. And I'm not going to lie, the way Chuya was running around with his gravity sort of around his body, and just like basically running away from all these shots from cubes that were firing, is almost like that typical boss battle that you have. You know, if you play a video game like Sword Art Online, Fatal Bullet or something, you have a big boss monster in the middle of the arena, and he's firing fireballs at you like pow, 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 and basically you're trying to dodge and wait for your opening. Meanwhile, Dazai is trapped inside this little container. Because of his ability, this container basically allows Rando to basically change the shape of it. But what it also does is it adds another layer to his ability, which I thought was pretty cool. He can basically reanimate a dead corpse in order to control it however he wants. And Rando's plan is basically to kill Chuya and use Chuya as a puppet. However, for the time being, Rando is using the former boss of the Port Mafia, which explains how people have been seeing the former boss. And you know what? I'm not too keen on the former boss's design. It's okay, like, it's not brilliant, but it's alright. But the one thing I do love about that character is he uses a scythe. And you know what? I'd pretty much like any character uses a scythe, really. And it was a pretty cool scythe. He does some damage to Dazai, because his scythe isn't an ability, it's an actual weapon. So we have Dazai and the former boss fighting in this little confined space. And we have Chuya and Rando basically fighting outside of that space, but still inside the subspace. And all it would take to defeat both of them is for Dazai to touch the box in which he's trapped in. So, while they're trying to find an opening, Dazai and Chuya are working together. Great, cool. We're seeing them cooperate after the countless times that we've seen them argue. And we actually find out something a little bit interesting. We notice that Chuya is fighting all the time with his hands in his pockets. And it's revealed to us in this episode as to why. And the revelation of it was kind of a little bit lackluster, but it kind of makes sense. Without really having his memories from 8 years ago, he only knows everything from 8 years to the present day in which we're watching this. he's trying to find his sense of purpose. He's trying to find what it is that he wants to live for and wants to strive for. We find this out at the end of the episode in the dialogue he has against the current Port Boss Mafia. And we find out that the reason as to why he tucks his hands away in his pockets is because only in the feeling like he can be defeated or losing can he find the enjoyment in his humanity. Like, he knows that he's Arakabaki now, and he's always felt like something was off. And he never really understood what that was until, this time in which he can finally be told what it is. So that was pretty good. Like I said, it was a little bit iffy on the whole reveal of that. Like, it was something I was interested in, but at the same time, it kind of came out of left field. Anyway, after some cool lighting effects and a lot of running around and back and forth action, we actually conclude the fight. And the way the fight concludes was pretty solid. We had Chuya basically standing outside of the barrier, because we know that Rando can expand and decrease the barrier that Dazai is in, and he powers up his gravity to the maximum. And basically, we have Dazai deflecting a blast using a metal steel plate that's on his arm, because we only see his arm bandaged up, and it's quite thick bandages, so it could easily fit a metal plate underneath it, and it protects him from the scythe slash. Pretty cool. And then they both get propelled towards each other, and they basically touch hands. It's kind of weird seeing those two actually hold hands. But anyway, it does the trick, breaks the barrier, stops Rando's subspace, and the former boss gets punched through the mouth by Dazai and disappears because the ability is basically nullified. That was a pretty good way of ending the fight, I will admit. And then while we have Rando basically lying on the floor, slowly dying, which he was hit pretty hard by Chuya, but come on, he should be able to survive a little bit more than that. And anyway, we find out that obviously he is a spy, and his plan, his mission, was to be able to basically get Arakabaki, and he wants to kill, now that he knows Chuya is Arakabaki, he wanted to kill Chuya so he could reanimate Chuya and make him into his puppet and have Arakabaki under his control. Now, he can only have one corpse under his control at one time, so it means he would lose the former boss, but that's really kind of a, not really a bad trade. Anyway, he doesn't succeed in this, and he basically says that, that basically, he lies there, slowly dying, and he tells Chuya that basically, that Chuya, you're strong as a human being and not as an origami. Which, I never really thought they referred to Arakabaki as being an origami. But what I'm thinking of is origami, and what origami to them in that Bungo Stray Dogs series is probably two completely different things. And, that is when we then get told that he's a spy, that he released Arakabaki, and the reason as to why he does. And we get told that his partner is dead. Okay, fine. And we also, so there's that, and then obviously he dies in that scene, and the lighting is very much, very appealing, if I'm honest with you. It's like a nice send-off scene. You have the sun setting, and everything is kind of fading out, and it's a very nice kind of touching moment. And then we have the sort of middle card where it comes up with Bungo Stray Dogs with the red text, and then we transition into the other bulk. Chuya joining the Port Mafia, finally. And the way they handled this situation was actually really good. So we find out that the scrub from episode 2, so the last episode, the sheep member with the grey hair, he betrays Chuya. And basically, when his guard's down, he stabs him. And he announces that because Chuya is not a very good leader, in their eyes, they've discussed with the other sheep members, and the sheep have now joined up with the GSS. That is the organisation that we got introduced to last week, that were one of the 3 factions that are the opposing side to the Port Mafia. And with Chuya being poisoned and his limbs being numb, he sinks down to the bottom of this cliff with his gravity powers. And this is where we see Dazai basically perched on a rock, looking like a frog about to pounce. And this scene was absolutely glorious. Anything with Dazai being manipulative and just all round, a great character is really good in my personal opinion, and this scene delivered that. He was conniving, he was manipulative, and he was very kind of Dazai-like because he was kind of jokey at the same time, but you understood that he was being serious. He says to Chuya that, he's got a message for him from the boss, and the boss wants him to formally join the Port Mafia. And normally Chuya would be like, nah, not going to bother, because he still wants to believe that the sheep members are still his friend even after stabbing him. Okay, fine, But then, because the sheep have joined up with the GSS, Dazai and his crew basically have been ordered to take the GSS out, which means the sheep will have to be taken out as well. And Dazai basically manipulates Chuya's sort of answer by basically saying that, if you want these guys to live, or I'll only listen to something that a superior or a colleague says, and it basically changes the perspective from Chuya's perspective, and basically says, look, join us, and I'll listen to what you've got to say, and I'll consider it and probably do it. So Chuya decides to join, and says, okay, fine, just don't kill the kids. And Dazai's like, okay guys, as we suggested and talked about earlier, the kids stay alive, and we killed the GSS. And, we knew that Dazai was kind of manipulative and conniving and great at planning, but it just shows that he, obviously knew the outcome before it even happened. And we're told by Chuya that he probably actually predicted this outcome all the way into the arcade when he made the phone call. And you know what? It probably was the bargaining chip to release the sheep members when they did, because like I said, in my last review, Dazai released the sheep members because he spoke to his boss. And the Port Mafia wouldn't do anything unless it benefited them personally. And you know what? Maybe that was some kind of trick and scheme to lure out the GSS in order to take them out, taking out one of their rivals. So that was a really good scene. And although he agrees to join, we don't actually see him specifically join just yet, until he actually is face to face with the boss. And we find out how he gets his hat in the future, and his hat comes from Dazai, because since he's put into Dazai's care, it's tradition for one person, for the leader in which has to care for the new guy, the new recruit, to hand something down. Now, the current boss and the boss that we know of in the Port Mafia handed Dazai his coat. And Dazai hands down Rando's hat. And we also find out that Rando's name isn't actually his name, it just came from someone that misread his hat. And we find out that his real name was actually Rimbaldu. It's going to be up on screen so you can read it yourself. I cannot pronunciate that name properly. Rambaldu. Something like that. And then, obviously, we get told what the current Port Mafia's boss views a leader as. He views a leader as someone being good enough to put people where they need to be, tell people how to do things that they need to be done, but is also someone who's not afraid to crawl through the dirt and to get their hands dirty when needed in order to protect the thing they hold dear, which in this case, in this example, is the city. This prompts Chuya to actually joining officially, and he gets put into the care of the Ice Queen, which is one of the main antagonists in Season 2. And then we have some more Dazai and Chuya interaction, where they're both kind of at each other's throat with a young, with a daughter, I think, of the current boss. you know, that really freaky child that I think her ability was she can put people into her sort of like little subspace, and then kind of play a game, and if they lose they die, but if they win a certain amount they can get released. I think that was her ability. I could be wrong. But then we have a 7-year time skip, and we're told that basically a year after the events that we're currently watching, Chuya finds the man and confronted the gift user, a spy that betrayed Rando. And this is where it gets a little bit weird, because it says he dies, and Rando himself said that he died. But the way they portrayed the guy writing the report, which the guy writing the report is Sakuya Shihaki Ango. I'll put a picture of him and I'll put the name up on the screen as well. He's a returning character. He's a character that's part of the kind of overall hierarchy structure that is used to cover up any incidences regarding gifted people. And the way they make him look out, it makes him look like that he's the person that betrayed Rando at the end. So making it up to him being actually alive, and that guy being him, because if he's writing the report, he can manipulate the words and the texts inside of it in order to benefit himself. And you know what, if they end up having him as the villain, then I'm okay with it. He seemed like a pretty knowledgeable guy and someone who can jump for a few loops in order to make the series a bit interesting later on down the road. But yeah, really that's what the episode entailed. I mean, it was a really good episode. There's some lovely animation, some nice effects, especially with the sun setting and the whole ability coming into play. Like, I love the colour scheme they used for Rando's subspace ability, the yellow kind of particles. It was all really nicely done. The teamwork and choreography of the fights was great. There was, again, we have the typical kind of outshots, poor facial features, being missing kind of shots, but I ain't going to be too picky with those. Music was beautifully placed in all the scenes that it was used, and it was just the right volume and context. Sound effects were brilliant, voice acting was on point. All round a very solid episode, and it was kind of good because we had a lot of reveals, and it looks like we might be going into the or back into the present that we know of. So with Anakatashi and the other gifted users and Atagawa, you know, hopefully all those characters make a return because they're all fantastic characters. Or maybe we'll find out a bit more about Chuya's backstory. Who knows? What I'm going to have for this review. So, yeah, great episode. Smash that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new so you never miss a video from me. And until next time, guys, keep it anime.